Welcome to Cooking from the Cave. I'm Chef Pete Trusiak, and on this wonderful Sunday afternoon we're going to be making some prime rib for you with some braised Brussels sprouts. First we're going to start off with the prime rib. The prime rib can come two ways. One, it can be boned in or boneless. We get our beef from our friends down at Heartland Meats. I've been buying from them for years now, so their meat normally comes boneless unless you specify it. So I'm going to show you how to handle or make a prime rib that's boneless. You can take this recipe and transfer it over to one that has the bone ends. It's just going to take a little bit longer for cooking with the bones, but everything else is exactly the same. Let's start by dressing this up. We're going to do something to this meat, and the recipe I use, or I like to use, is a quarter cup of parsley and about a quarter cup of chopped green onions. Follow that up by 2 tablespoons of chopped garlic. And if you notice with the prime rib, if yours has a lot of fat on it, you're not going to need to add any oil to this or any extra fat to it. In this case, I'm going to add just a touch of truffle oil to it. And this you can pick up at any specialty grocery store. And salt and pepper. Now we're going to be using our sea salt. Do about 2 to 3 pinches, so roughly about a tablespoon, maybe a tablespoon and a half. We're going to stir this up, and that truffle oil really comes through now. It smells great. Instead of using pre-ground pepper for this, I'm going to use cracked pepper, so I get that nice body and that crunch when it comes to cooking the pepper, and that pepper's going to get nice and smoky in here. And from here, we can go ahead and take that prime rib and drop it in here. We're going to rub it real well. Before I start tossing it in the herbs and the garlic mixture, I want to point out that the prime rib should be at or close to room temperature. So after you buy it from your butcher, obviously you're going to store it in your refrigerator. Bring it out about 30 minutes before you're actually going to do anything to it, so it comes up to room temperature. What this helps is that the protein strands in here won't tighten up when it goes through the thermal shock of going straight from your refrigerator into your oven. So let's get this coated, and while I'm coating it, I want to press the herbs. You don't have to be gentle with prime rib. It's not going to go anywhere. It's already dead. I mean, you can press this in, use a little force. You can get the ends if you want, and really work this in so that the herbs and everything sticks to that meat. I don't want to see a lot left in the bowl when I'm done. We're going to bring it over here, and I'm going to stand this up so you can kind of see what that looks like. Our next step is to tie it. The first step you're going to do when tying the roast is you're going to make a double knot in your first loop. What this does is it makes sure that your prime rib goes from this elongated shape into more of a round. This will ensure that it cooks evenly. And the next is we're going to make loops all the way around. So I'm going to start with a straight string. I'm going to have it loop around my hand. And I still remember my culinary instructor 15 years ago having us do this over and over again with pork loins till we got it right. And we're going to continue making that loop, turning that string, dropping it around until your roast is completely tied. After you have your 4 loops, we're going to flip it over, make sure you have some string hanging over. I always err on the side of having too much string, so I cut this. This is a 4-pound roast. I cut this string about 3 feet long, and I'm going to intertwine the string under every other loop. Now, why not tie it before I put all my herbs on here and seasonings? Well, it's a good question, but you want to season the meat, not the string. If I cut the string Afterwards, what happens is the string comes off and most of my herbs. I don't want that to happen. I want those herbs to stay on the meat. Now your final knot here doesn't have to be a double knot. You can just make a standard shoelace, 2 loops, tie it up, and you have your wonderful prime rib. At this point, we're going to take the roast and put it into a 450-degree oven. The reason for a 450-degree oven or a hot oven is so that it sears the outside. Now, if we're doing this with a boned-in prime rib, you're going to want to make sure the ribs are on the roasting rack and the fat is on the top side up. Otherwise, what happens is the side with the fat will never really cook and it doesn't get caramelized, and people want that caramelized fat on their prime ribs. So we're going to let this cook now at 450 for about 15 minutes, and we're going to turn that oven then down to 325 and let it cook for another 12 minutes per pound. Now again, this is a 4-pound roast, so 12 minutes at that. We're going to let it cook for right around another 45 minutes after that point. So we'll come back in 15 minutes and we'll turn this oven down. Our prime rib is in the oven. We're going to move on to our horseradish sauce, which is a simple recipe. We're going to take 1 cup of sour cream, 2 tablespoons of horseradish, combine those 2 ingredients, stir it up. The key is to let this sit though in the refrigerator for the entire time that the prime rib is cooking. So as soon as that prime rib goes in, start this sauce, and then we'll move on to the rest of our meal. A couple pinches of salt. I don't need a lot of pepper. I'm going to go probably 1/4 of a teaspoon to 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And from here, we're going to go right in the refrigerator and let this set up. And now we can move on to our Brussels sprouts. We're going to use a flat bottom pan with a lid that fits snugly on top for this, because we're going to saute the Brussels sprouts, but we're going to really braise them as well. So we're going to give them some heat, and then we're going to add some liquid to this. We're going to start by adding some cubed or diced bacon. The easiest way to cut bacon is to do it while it's still cold. So if you know you need, and this is 4 slices of bacon, if you know you need X amount of pieces of bacon, put those in the freezer, let them harden for maybe about 15 minutes. Then when you cut them, the fat won't melt on you, and it'll make cutting them very easy. So it's a simple trick, but one that'll help you out in the long run. We're going to increase our heat on this pan. With the bacon, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of oil just to start that bacon, start letting it render. And we're going to let it sit in this pan now on high heat for about 30 seconds. All the time that I'm doing that, I'm going to be stirring it. And I can just start to smell the bacon. And the reason for this is, one, I want the bacon to caramelize, but I want that fat to really be released from that bacon as well. So after 30 seconds, we're going to turn the heat down to a low heat. Continue stirring this for another 1 to 2 minutes, and then we'll start incorporating our other ingredients. 2 minutes have passed. We're going to incorporate our shallots, which I've thinly sliced. 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. This is my ultimate recipe for getting anybody to love Brussels sprouts. So if you don't like Brussels sprouts, you still have to try this recipe. I guarantee after you eat this, you will think totally different of Brussels sprouts. And we're going to stir in the brown sugar as well as the shallots. Once the brown sugar and the shallots have evenly combined with that bacon, you're still going to have some water left in the pan. That's the fat from the bacon. It's alright. We're going to dump in our Brussels sprouts. Before I do that though, I want to show you how to handle Brussels sprouts if it's the first time or if you just have questions about it. You're going to have the stem end, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that stem end off, exposing the white core. I quartered some of these, so from here I'm going to just carefully cut down that core, make sure I get the core in each of the 4 pieces. As simple as that. We're going to dump the Brussels sprouts in with our shallots, our bacon, and our brown sugar. Add 1 tablespoon of brandy. You'll hear it start to simmer down at the bottom. The brown sugar and the brandy really cuts that bitterness of the Brussels sprouts, so that's why I'm in love with this recipe. I think you guys will be too after you try it. And bacon makes everything taste better anyway, so what the heck. Once you notice that that brandy has cooked away, it should take maybe 15 seconds, we're going to add about 1 cup of stock. Put our lid on. We're going to bring that up to a boil. This should only take a few seconds because your lid's on. Once it comes up to a boil, we're going to turn it down to a simmer, and we're going to cook it for about 25 minutes just on a low heat, lowest you can go without your burner going off. And by the time that's done, your prime rib will probably be done, and then it's ready for dinner. Our Brussels sprouts have been turned down from that high boil, and now we're going to check on our prime rib. You get beautiful color in this. You don't have to rotate the prime rib because you're going to be using a roasting rack for this. And that'll elevate it for you in the oven so that you can get heat from the bottom as well as the top. But the next step, remember we were cooking this at 450. Let's turn this down now to 325. And I'm going to set a timer for about 35 minutes. Because I had that oven open and I lost some heat with it, so it's going to drop temperature down to that 325 pretty fast, so that caramelization is going to slow down. So let's check this in about 35 minutes. We'll come back, we'll get a temperature reading of it, and then we'll finish up this meal. After about 35 minutes in the oven, let's check our prime rib. And the easiest thing with this is to get yourself a good thermometer, one that's easy to read. And we're going to insert it in the fattest part or the thickest part of the prime rib. We're looking for the temperature to get to be 120. What 120 is after we let the meat rest will be roughly around a medium rare, which is where you want your rare to medium rare, which is where you want your prime rib to be. If you want it more or well done, leave it in there till it gets to about 130. It'll go up about 5 degrees for every pound as it rests. Okay, right now it's right at 110, so we're going to leave it in there for another 10 minutes, and we'll come back and check it. With about 10 minutes before our prime rib is ready to come out of the oven, we're going to remove the lid from our Brussels sprouts. What you'll notice, remember it's been on low heat for a while now, what you notice is you have a little bit of liquid left in the bottom of the pan. Let's get that cooked off so the sugar that we added starts to caramelize with the bacon fat. So I'm still going to leave it on low heat, but just take the lid off, let it cook now for 10 minutes, and we'll wait for our prime rib to come out of the oven. Timer went off, so that's 10 more minutes, making it a grand total of an hour. And we're going to check on our internal temperature of our prime rib. We're going to look for it to be right at 120. It's about 121 now. So let's pull it out. We'll let it sit. And this is where a really nice cutting board. This is made by Epicurean, but I'm going to flip this board over, and it's going to have this juice groove for it. And we're going to actually take the prime rib off of the roasting pan, slide it onto the cutting board, and we're going to let it sit now for about, and I do this 5 minutes per pound. It's a 4-pound roast. I'm going to let it sit here for about 15 to 20 minutes before I slice into it. What happens is that internal temperature that I talked about before will actually continue to cook that meat, so we get that nice rare to medium rare prime rib that we're looking for. The roast is up to 145 now. If the roast is larger, if it's anything over 4 pounds, you're going to want to tent it so it keeps the heat in there, but being that we let it rest on the counter, it's a smaller roast, that's fine to do that. So anything over maybe 5 pounds, I would tent it and still let it rest and everything, but just so you don't lose a lot of heat. Talked about that end that we just tied with the bow tie type knot. We're going to Get our twine out. Just kind of follow in reverse how we tied it together. You can cut these, and they're going to come right apart. And the last thing to do is just plate it up and slice it. Now be careful, the prime rib will still be warm. As you can see, there's still heat coming off of it. Doing this for many years, I'm a little more used to it, but just be careful. And from here, whenever you're slicing prime rib, you're going to want to get yourself a real thin knife. Longer the better, and scalloped edged or serrated so that it's easy to cut through the knife. Now, working with the cutting board, I'm going to push the knife into the meat and I'm going to drag it back, and I'm going to continue to do that until I get my slices. And I get that nice medium rare, beautiful color on the inside. I just want to keep from having it be too back and forth sawing like this. There's too much energy there. So push down, pull back towards you. Push down, pull back towards you. And there you go. There's a little kernel from that ribeye. But remember that oval shaped piece we started with now is a nice tight, compact, round shape to end with. So I'm going to continue to slice this up. We do have guests tonight, so I'll cut one more piece. We'll begin to plate this up. Now, before we plate up our Brussels sprouts, we'll want to taste it, make sure it's seasoned properly. The bacon's going to have some salt in it, the sweetness from the sugar. So just give it a taste. If you're not completely happy, or you think it needs a little bit more salt, you're going to add a little salt to it, but I think it's right on. I'm going to add just a pinch of pepper. Give it a stir. And then we can plate these. I think your family's new favorite vegetable here. Brussels sprouts with your prime rib. We'll go to our fridge to grab our sour cream. I'm not going to worry about putting the sour cream, horseradish sour cream on this because I don't want to blend it with any colors or anything like that. But there you go, beautiful prime rib, Brussels sprouts, horseradish sour cream. I'm just going to garnish the plate and I'm going to bring it out to the dinner table for my family and our guests. Something simple like that. And thanks again for watching Cooking from the Cave. I'm Chef Pete Truziak, and we'll see you real soon.